Hi, Aquarius. Welcome in and welcome to your reading. So, Aquarius, Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus placements. Today, we're tuning in into the energies and messages coming through for you right now using these oracle cards and these tarot cards. Now, this reading is meant to highlight what's unfolding around you, what your spirit needs to be aware of, and what guidance is available at this moment in time. Now, this is a general reading, so please remember take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Not every message will be for everyone, and that's okay. Trust what naturally aligns with you. Now, as we go through this reading, stay open, grounded, and intuitive. Sometimes the message that finds you is the one who didn't even know you needed to hear. Now, if you feel called to go deeper and would like a private personal reading, all the details on how to book are listed in the description box below. All right, Aquarius, let's start. All right, Aquarius. Let's start with your first oracle card for this um, first set of cards. Right here, you have the oracle card insight. Iolite, yeah, iolite. Have you seen an iolite, or is this the first time you've seen or heard of iolite? Anyway, um, all right. I hope you can see the card clearly, Aquarius. All right, so I feel like this first card, Aquarius, comes through as the spiritual key of your entire reading. Now, for me, I feel like this insight is not about sudden realizations or dramatic awakenings for you at this time, Aquarius. And for me, this is not a lightning bolt moment. I feel like for you, Aquarius, this is the kind of like knowing that settles into your body quietly, right? The kind that comes after you have, lived through enough to stop questioning yourself. And what Spirit is saying here is, what your spirit guys saying is like you already know something, like you already know something, not intellectually, not hypothetically, not but viscerally. All right, so I feel like there's a deep inner clarity forming within you right now or recently, a calm, steady awareness that doesn't need validation. For me, I feel like here you are no longer looking outside yourself for permission, signs, or, constant reassurance. I feel like the insight that you are receiving right now or recently is subtle but unshakable. And it's the kind that changes how you move, how you decide, how you say yes and no. And for you, Aquarius, this is significant because I feel like you have spent so much of your life processing, right? For some of you, analyzing, questioning, and rethinking, right? So for me, I feel like you've been the observer, the thinker, the one trying to understand the bigger picture. But here, the insight card here marks the moment where that thinking gives way to your inner authority. So for me, this is the, transition from what should I do to I know what I'm going to do, right? So the energy here suggests that recent experiences, especially ones that were confusing, disappointing, or emotionally draining, were not meant to break you. Okay, for me, they were meant to refine Aquarius. Okay, your discernment, because I know that you already have that discernment, so you can now see patterns clearly. Who is consistent, what drains you, what actually works, and what only looks good on the surface. And this insight is also about, for me, timing. You are being shown that not everything needs to be rushed or forced. Some doors open only when you stop pushing and start aligning. And that's why this card feels calm, grounded, and centered. It's not asking you to act impulsively, it's asking you to trust the quiet knowing. So here's Spirit is emphasizing, pause long enough to hear yourself. So there's also a message here about clarity after confusion. So I feel like, yeah, if you have been felt mentally foggy in the past, I feel like that fog is lifting already. And if you have doubted your decisions before, that doubt is softening. You are learning the difference between fear based hesitation and intuitive patience, and that distinction changes everything. Now, for some of you Aquarius, this insight is about choosing yourself without guilt. Okay, for others, I feel like it's about recognizing that a chapter has already ended energetically, even if it hasn't fully closed in the physical world yet. Okay, you don't need more evidence. The realization has already landed, right? So for me, I feel like the insight here card gently reminds you you don't need to convince anyone, you don't need to over explain, you don't need to rush your next move, Aquarius, right? So your clarity here is enough. And this is a sacred moment of your inner alignment where your mind, your intuition, and your lived experience finally met. And once that happens, your next steps become simpler, cleaner, and far more powerful, Aquarius. So trust, the knowing that comes when everything goes quiet, because that's your truth speaking. Now, let's move ahead to your first tarot card. You have the Hierophant. So you have here the Hierophant. Now, this is for me, this is in your reading here, this is your soul path, this is structure and aligned authority. So Hierophant enters your reading here as a threshold moment for me, Aquarius. So this is not about restriction. Okay. This is not about losing your individuality, Aquarius. I feel like for me, for some of you Aquarius, this is one of the most, you're one of, I feel like the Hierophant shows up here when your soul is ready to anchor wisdom into form, right? Yeah, I feel like you have already questioned everything, you have already broken patterns, you have already walked the road of doing it differently, and now Spirit is asking something deeper of you. What will you commit to once you truly know who you are? Okay, the Hierophant represents your chosen structure, so the kind that supports you instead of confines you. And this card suggests you are stepping into a phase where alignment matters more than rebellion, and integrity matters more than approval. And for some of you Aquarius, this often shows up as taking a role that carries responsibility or influence, or becoming a guide, a mentor, or a stabilizing presence for others, or committing to a path that feels right, even if it's not exciting on the surface. Or maybe this is you choosing consistency over chaos. There's a strong message here about inner authority, that you are no longer meant to outsource your beliefs, values, or direction. The Hierophant here doesn't ask you to follow blindly, it asks you to stand for something. So, and this could be like a career path with purpose, not just income, or a spiritual practice that is disciplined, not sporadic, or a lifestyle that supports your nervous system, not drains it, or a long-term commitment that aligns with your values. Now, if you have been feeling the urge to get serious about something, this card confirms that instinct, Aquarius. Now, the Hierophant here also speaks of tradition and lineage, but in a personal way. So here you are redefining what tradition means for you. You are no longer rejecting structure just because it exists. You are selecting the structure that resonates with your soul. And there's also a karmic undertone here, because this card often appears when past lessons are complete and it's time to embody what you have learned, right? And of course, you're not meant to keep searching forever. At some point, wisdom must be lived, right? And that's where you are right now, I feel like. And also, this is a card of stability through alignment. Once you commit to your values, to your path, to your truth, everything else begins to organize around you. Like life becomes less chaotic, right? Not because it's controlled, but because it's intentional. So here, true freedom comes from choosing what you stand for and standing in it fully, Aquarius. So here, for me, I feel like you are stepping into a role that carries weight, meaning, and longevity. And unlike before, where you're ready for it. All right, let's move on to the next card, the Ten of Pentacles. I feel like this is a future energy. All right, here the Ten of Pentacles arrives in your reading as a destination card, I feel like. So this is not an in-between phase, and it's not a lesson you still need to learn. I feel like this card shows where everything is heading for you, Aquarius, if you stay aligned with what you already know to be true. Now, for some of you, Aquarius, this card speaks of arrival after a long road. So there's a sense here that much of your life has involved rebuilding or starting over, recalibrating, or feeling like stability was always just slightly out of reach. Now, the Ten of Pentacles marks the end of that cycle, because I feel like here it tells a story of permanence, rootedness, and security that doesn't need to be defended or explained. For me, this is a future oriented energy, but it's also forming now through the choices you are making. So I feel like here this card predicts a period of financial consistency, not survival mode, a living situation or environment that finally feels settled, right? Or a long-term success built through patience, not pressure, and support systems that don't disappear when things get hard, right? So unlike quick win cards, like the Ten of Pentacles here represents quiet wealth, right? The kind that grows steadily and stays, right? Stays. And so this may come through a career that matures over time, or a business that compounds slowly, or a role that offers longevity rather than volatility, right? Now, for you, Aquarius, I feel like this is especially meaningful because you thrive in vision, right, and innovation. But this card shows you are learning how to anchor your vision into reality. Your ideas are no longer floating. They're becoming structures, systems, and results. There is also a strong theme of legacy here. All right, so you're not just building for today, you are shaping a future that reflects your values. Even if you don't think of yourself as traditional, this card suggests that there's a desire here to create something dependable, something that others can lead on. All right, and so for me, this can look like financial security that allows freedom instead of anxiety, or a family or chosen family dynamic built on trust and continuity, and teaching, mentoring, or passing on what you have learned, or creating something that stands even when you step away. Energetically, the Ten of Pentacles here is saying like you are safe to plan long term now, Aquarius. All right, so the instability of the past is no longer defining your future. And what once felt uncertain is being replaced by grounded confidence. You are no longer just imagining what stability looks like. You are living into it, Aquarius. And this card also reassures you that your patience is not wasted. All right, you know, the slow work, the discipline, the moments where it felt like nothing was happening, those were the foundations being laid, and now the structure is strong enough to hold abundance. So what you build now, Aquarius, will support you for years to come. Choose sustainability over speed. This is the energy of lasting success, earned, embodied, and protected. Let's move on to your last tarot card for this set. You have the Seven of Pentacles. Okay, for me, this is patience, divine timing, and quiet growth, Aquarius. So, the Seven of Pentacles appears here in your reading as a pause that has purpose. Okay, so for me, this card speaks directly to that space where you have been asking yourself, is this even working, right? Not out of negativity, but out of exhaustion, perhaps, right? For some of you Aquarius, this is the moment where your effort has already been given, right? Energy has been already been invested, and now the waiting begins. And waiting for you, Aquarius, often the hardest part. So was maybe some of you, yeah. And this is not a card of giving up, right? This is the card of evaluation, patience, and trust. So the Seven of Pentacles here shows that what you have planted is alive, Aquarius. The roots are growing underground, even if the surface still looks quiet. And Spirit wants you to understand that the lack of visible results does not mean lack of progress. It means the work has moved into a phase where, a phase you can't rush. Now, for some of you Aquarius, this card carries a very specific message. Do not abandon something just because it's no longer exciting. Right? For some of you, I feel like it's something that you need to hear right now. And you are in a season where consistency matters more than inspiration. And the temptation may be to pivot, start over, or perhaps chase something that promises faster validation. But the Seven of Pentacles here warns you that doing so now, Aquarius, would mean walking away just before things begin to solidify. So I feel like this card often shows up when you are closer to success than you realize. Your efforts are compounding quietly, and divine timing is protecting you from premature outcomes, right? So energetically, this is about maturity. You are learning to hold faith without constant proof. You are learning to stay grounded even when your mind wants answers, and that in itself is part of the reward. There's also guidance here about discernment. I feel like the Seven of Pentacles isn't just about waiting, it's about assessing. And Spirit invites you to reflect what's worth continuing, what needs refinement, not replacement, right? Where can you improve without starting from zero? Right? So this is a strategic patience, not passive waiting. For some of you Aquarius, this card aligns beautifully with the larger story of your reading, okay? You have gained insight, right? Chosen structure and are building toward long-term stability here with the 10 of Pentacles. And now the 7 of Pentacles here simply reminds you that big outcomes takes time to mature. So trust the process, Aquarius, that you are already in. Growth doesn't need to be loud to be real. Your future is not stalled, it's ripening, actually. All right, let's move on to the next set of cards, Aquarius. Here you have self-love, Cobalto Calcite. I feel like this card comes in as the emotional foundation of your reading. You know, before anything external changes, before justice is served, before opportunities arrive, and before momentum build, I feel like your spirit is addressing you how to relate to yourself. Okay. So Aquarius, this self-love card enters your reading not as a suggestion, but as necessity. I feel like this is the kind of message that arrives when your soul has been quietly asking you for, gentleness after a long season, in fact, not session, but a long season of endurance. Now, for some of you Aquarius, self-love here is not about indulgence or ego. It is about repair. You have learned how to stay functional even when emotionally stretched in, right? Or stretched thin. I feel like you've learned how to be logical when feelings felt inconvenient. You have learned how to keep moving even when parts of you needed rest, right? And while that strength carried you far, I feel like this card reveals that it also came at a cost. Cobalto Calcite here speaks to emotional honesty, the kind that happens when you finally stop minimizing your own needs. I feel like this card is asking you to look at where you have been. Are you being too hard on yourself? Too patient with situations that drained you? Too willing to self-sacrifice in the name of peace or responsibility? Self-love here is the moment where you realize that being strong doesn't mean being unfeeling. It means knowing when to soften. And there's also a deep message here of forgiveness toward yourself in this card, right? Forgiveness for perhaps choices made when you didn't know better. Forgiveness for staying too long. Forgiveness for leaving too soon. Perhaps forgiveness for not being who you thought you should be by now. And Spirit is gently saying that you did the best you could with what you had. And this card also speaks of reclaiming your emotional center. So Grace, your energy often lives in the mind, right? For majority of you. But the Cobalto Calcite brings attention back to the heart, to your heart. So it invites you to check in with your feelings without judgment. to feel without immediately fixing or explaining or rationalizing. And self love here in this reading is not passive, okay? It's boundary setting love. It's choosing what supports your well being, even if it disappoints others. It's honoring your limits without guilt. It's understanding that your needs matter simply because they are yours. There's also a healing of old wounds here, especially those tied to feeling unseen, misunderstood, or emotionally overlooked. And this card suggests that you are learning how to give yourself the validation you once sought externally. And once that shift happens, everything changes. When you treat yourself with care, you attract fairer situations, you make cleaner decisions, and you stop settling for less than alignment. So self-love is not something you earn after success. It what allows success to come without costing you yourself, Aquarius. So this card reminds you that gentleness is not a detour, it's the foundation. All right, let's start with your first star card here. On the second set, you have the Justice. The Justice. This is truth, right? Karmic balance and aligned outcomes. So I feel like here the Justice card here enters your reading as a moment of reckoning and restoration. This is not about punishment. It's about truth finally standing on its own, without distortion, without excuses, and without emotional noise. Now, for you, Aquarius, justice shows up when the universe is responding to your long-term patterns, not just recent events. So this card suggests that there's some situations in your life, especially those where you felt misunderstood, misjudged, or treated unfairly, are now being rebalanced at the root level. And justice does not rush, justice does not argue, justice simply corrects. So this card tells a story of accountability, but not in a dramatic way. Okay, it's subtle, clean, and unmistakable. So people see it. People see things clearly now. Circumstances align with truth. Decisions made in the past will come full circle, and not to trap you, but to resolve. Now, for some of you, Aquarius, this often involves moments where you stop doubting your version of events, and you trust your judgment without needing validation, and you choose integrity even when it's perhaps uncomfortable. And the justice here is also deeply tied to self-honesty. This card isn't only about others being held accountable, okay? It's about you honoring your own standards, and it's asking you, are you living in alignment with your values right now? Now, when the answer is yes, justice becomes protection. But when the answer is no, justice becomes redirection, Aquarius. So there's a strong message here that truth is on your side, but it requires clarity. Half-truths, emotional justifications, or avoidance won't survive this phase. What is real will remain. What is misaligned will quietly fall away. Now, for some of you, Aquarius, this card signals legal or contractual clarity. Okay, fair outcomes in work or finances, a clear decision that brings peace, and a karmic closure with a person or situation. But beyond the practical, Aquarius, the justice here restores your inner balance. So it brings relief, the kind it comes when you no longer have to explain yourself, when things make sense again, and when you can stand firmly in your choices without self-doubt. So live honestly, Aquarius. Decide consciously. That's the message, and trust that balance will be restored. Yeah, because justice here reminds you that alignment always wins in the end. And right now, alignment is working in your favor, Aquarius. Right, let's move on to the next tarot card. Here you have the Ace of Pentacles. Now, I feel like this, for me, this Ace of Pentacles enters your reading here as a gift you can actually hold, Aquarius. So, and this is not an idea, not a promise, not a someday. I feel like this is the universe placing something real in your hands and asking one simple question, Aquarius: what will you build with this? Now, for you, Aquarius, this card marks the moment where, possibility becomes practical, right? After insight, after self love, and karmic realignment, I feel like now you are standing at the threshold of a new beginning that has weight, has value, and long term potential. So, this card, for me, clearly speaks of a fresh start in a material world. Perhaps this is a new job, a new role, or a new career path, a financial opportunity that feels stable, a business idea that finally has a structure, or a chance to rebuild security in a healthier way. All right. Now, unlike impulsive beginnings, this Ace of Pentacles here arrives quietly. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't demand immediate action, I feel like. Instead, it invites intention. So for you, Aquarius, this is especially significant because you often lived in vision, right? And yeah, future thinking. So this card grounds you in the present and says, start here, start simply, start sustainably. So, and also there's a strong message here about, yeah, value, both external and internal. I feel like this opportunity reflects your growing self-worth, Aquarius, because you have stopped undervaluing yourself. The universe mirrors that shift by offering something that respects your time, your energy, and your skills. The Ace of Pentacles here also carries the energy of trust, I feel like. So you are being trusted with a seed that can grow into something substantial, but only if you nurture it, of course, consistently, right? So this is not about shortcuts or fast wins. This is about tending to something that compounds over time. Now, emotionally, Aquarius, this card brings reassurance. Okay, it says that stability is possible without sacrificing your freedom, and that abundance can be calm, not chaotic. That success doesn't have to cost you your peace. So, I feel like this is a beginning that will support you, not drains you. So, whatever that is, Aquarius, plan it with care and it will grow. The Ace of Pentacles here reminds you that aligned opportunities feel steady, not urgent. And this one is meant to last, I feel like. Okay. Now let's move on to the next card. You have the Chariot. The Chariot, Aquarius, the Chariot here arrives as the moment everything begins to move forward with purpose. I feel like this is momentum, self mastery, and aligned victory. This is not chaotic motion, and it's not luck carrying you this time. This is earned, for me, this is earned momentum, the kind that, comes after inner alignment that has been established. Now, for some of you, Aquarius, the Chariot marks a turning point between knowing and doing, right? So I feel like here you've already done the inner work. You've reflected, healed, recalibrated, and made peace with truths that were once uncomfortable for some of you. And now Spirit shows you standing at the reins of your own life, no longer pulled in opposite directions by doubt, emotions, or external pressure. The Chariot here is about self-mastery. It acknowledges that you may still feel conflicting emotions, perhaps hope and fear, excitement and hesitation, but unlike before, those inner opposites no longer control you. Here you are learning how to hold them and still choose direction, or can still choose direction. And I feel like this card tells a story of you regaining confidence after uncertainty, taking control where you once felt stuck, choosing a path and committing to it fully. Make moving forward without needing perfect conditions. And for you, Aquarius, this is especially powerful because you often wait until everything makes sense. But the Chariot here is saying you don't need full certainty to move, only clarity of intention. There's a strong message here also about discipline over impulse. Okay. And the chariot doesn't rush, but it doesn't stall either. So it moves with focus. It asks you to channel your energy toward one clear direction instead of scattering it across too many possibilities, right? So this card also carries the energy of victory, but not the loud kind. It's a quiet win that comes from consistency, self-belief, and inner alignment. Progress accelerates once you decide that you are no longer negotiable, Chris. Now, for some of you, I feel like this card signals physical movement, like travel, getting a car, change in environment, or career advancements through your determination, of course, or taking the lead instead of waiting for permission, or finally acting on something you have been contemplating for a very long time. Now, most importantly, Aquarius, this card confirms that you are ready. I feel like for some of you, ready to be seen, ready to lead your own life, ready to move forward without dragging the past behind you. So, the message here for you, Aquarius, is when your inner world is aligned, the outer world responds. So take the reins, Aquarius, your path is open. Because the chariot here reminds you that forward motion doesn't require perfection, only commitment. Right? Okay, now let's move on to the next set of cards. Aquarius, here you have the impact. Ooh, impact. Says here, this is the stone of Campo del Cilio. Interesting name. I feel like this card does not arrive gently. I feel like it arrives precisely. Um, if I'm not mistaken, Campo del Cilio is a meteorite, something not born of Earth, right? Something that travels vast distance before making contact. So when this card appears for you, Aquarius, I feel like it signals a distinct interruption, like a moment or perhaps a realization or event that feels sudden, sharp, and also perhaps impossible to ignore. Not because it's dramatic on the surface, but because it changes your internal gravity, and this is the kind of impact that alters your trajectory. Now, for your Aquarius, this is not about chaos or punishment, okay? I feel like it's more about clarity arriving all at once. Something clicks, a truth lands, a pattern becomes undeniable for you, or what you once rationalized, tolerated, or postponed suddenly feels unsustainable. So you may find yourself thinking, why did I accept this for so long? Or I see it now and I can't unsee it. Or this is no longer fits who I am becoming, right? And that's impact doing its work. Okay. And also, this card suggests that the universe has been sending quiet signals for some time. But now, Aquarius, it chooses a single decisive moment to get your attention. Not to scare you, okay, but to wake you up from autopilot. So if you have been hearing this kind of message, almost the same message like mine, what I'm saying here, then this is the confirmation. Aquarius, your energy can endure a lot when there's logic involved, but impact cuts through logic and goes straight to truth. There's also a strong message here about divine timing. This impact doesn't arrive early or late. It arrives when you are ready to handle it. Even if it feels jarring or it is actually protective. It prevents you from continuing down a path that would slowly drain you. Now, emotionally, this can feel like a sudden detachment, a sharp emotional boundary forming, or a sense of finality without drama. And this is not a breakdown, okay? This is a breakthrough. Impact here also marks the moment where old timelines collapse. Plans you once clung to may dissolve, or expectations you carried may lose their hold. And in that clearing, Aquarius, something quieter but truer begins to emerge. So this card doesn't demand immediate action, okay? It simply shifts your awareness to, or so completely that action becomes inevitable later. You don't rush after impact. You recalibrate. So some truth will arrive like meteors, Aquarius, sudden, undeniable, and life altering. Trust the shift they create. Once impact occurs or happens, there is no going back to what was, right? And that's not loss. I feel like that's alignment. Okay. All right, let's start with this Five of Swords. Five of Swords. Aquarius. So, the Five of Swords here appears as a moment of hard-earned awareness. Okay? This is not about winning or losing in the traditional sense. For me, it's about realizing that some battles were never meant to be fought to the end. So for you, Aquarius, this card speaks to conflict that drains rather than strengthens. So situations where words became weapons, or power dynamics overshadowed understanding, where being right came at a cost of emotional peace. So this is the point where you look at the aftermath of a struggle and realize that even if you stood your ground, something essential was lost along the way, right? So I feel like this card tells the story of ego-based conflict, of course. Now, not necessarily your ego, Aquarius, but I feel like the environment you were in, right? Perhaps, competing wills, unspoken resentments, conversations that felt more like battles than bridges. Over time, this dynamic teaches a painful truth. Not every victory is worth the cost, Aquarius, right? Now, for you, the Five of Swords, I feel like often emerges when you have been trying to explain yourself to people who were never truly listening, right? Or when you have stayed engaged in a dynamic that required constant defense or justification or emotional armor. And this card marks the moment of clarity that you no longer need to prove your intelligence. You no longer need to win the argument. You no longer need to stay where respect is conditional, right? And walking away here is not surrender, it's self respect, Aquarius. There's also a message about emotional detachment with wisdom. Aquarius, you are learning here that discernment can be an act of power. You don't owe your energy to every conflict. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Some situations resolved in themselves once you stop feeding them, right? And the Five of Swords here teaches discernment that when you speak, when to speak, when to stay silent, when to step away entirely, right? And this card also, I feel like, prepares you for what comes next by releasing hollow conflicts. I feel like you create space for clarity, peace, and aligned connections. The chaos fades, not because you defeated it, but because you outgrow it, Aquarius. So I feel like the message here for your Aquarius is the true strength is knowing when to walk away, right? Peace is the victory that lasts, or maybe this is something that you need to hear, Aquarius. So this card confirms that choosing your well-being over ego-driven battles is not a loss. It's evolution. All right. Now let's move on to the next tarot card. You have the Hangman. This is surrender, higher perspective, and sacred pause, Aquarius. The Hangman appears in your reading as an invitation, Aquarius. For me, it's an invitation not to struggle harder, but to stop struggling at all. Now, for you, Aquarius, this is one of the most challenging yet transformative energies. Here, you are a sign that thrives on understanding, problem solving, and forward thinking. Now, when life feels uncertain, your instinct is to figure it out, right? And the Hangman asks you to do the opposite, Aquarius. So I feel like this card here arrives when effort is no longer the answer. Here, Spirit is guiding you into a space of conscious suspension, not stagnation, okay? Not punishment, but a deliberate pause where action would only repeat old patterns, all right? So this is a moment where movement pauses so wisdom can catch up. So you may feel like progress has slowed unexpectedly, or answers aren't arriving the way they used to, or you're being asked to wait without clear instructions. And that discomfort is the point, Aquarius. The Hangman here teaches you that clarity does not always come from doing more. It often comes from seeing differently. By stepping out of the usual rhythm, you gain access to insight that was previously invisible. Perspectives flip, assumptions dissolve, and truth becomes simpler. Now, for you, Aquarius, I feel like this card is deeply spiritual. It suggests that something in your life cannot move forward until you release control over how it should unfold. I feel like you're being asked here to trust timing, even when logic wants, guarantees. And this is surrender, but not defeat. It's a surrender of, I feel like, forcing outcomes, over explaining yourself, or, carrying responsibility that isn't yours. There's also a quiet purification happening here, like old beliefs, outdated goals, and identities you have outgrown are loosening their grip. So here you are no longer who you were, and that, and the pause allows that transition to complete without resistance. The Hangman often brings a sacred delay that protects you, Aquarius, right? If things were to move forward too quickly, you might miss an important truth or repeat an old cycle. So stillness becomes the teacher here. And spirit message here is gentle for you, Aquarius, but firm. Let go. You don't need to decide anything right now. Okay, for those of you who needs to hear this. And in this suspended space, Aquarius, your intuition will strengthen and your nervous system recalibrates. And when movement resumes, it will feel clean, aligned, and undeniably right. So what you release in stillness returns as clarity. Trust the pause. It is shaping your next becoming. The Hangman here reminds you that sometimes the most powerful progress happens when you stop trying to progress at all, right? Let's move on to the next tarot card. You have the Four of Swords. Here, for me, this Four of Swords is about rest, recovery, and integration before the next chapter, Aquarius. So this card here arrives as a non-negotiable message. You are being asked to rest. Not later, not when things settle, but now. Okay. Now, for some Aquarius, this card is deeply compassionate and deeply necessary. You are a sign that can remain mentally active even when exhausted, right? And emotionally composed even when overwhelmed. And the Four of Swords here recognizes that strength and gently insists that it has been overused. And this card speaks to mental and emotional recovery, not laziness or avoidance. So I feel like you have recently processed heavy realizations, released draining conflicts, and surrendered control where you once pushed, right? So that work costs energy. And the Four of Swords here appears to ensure that you don't rush forward carrying unhealed residue from the past chapter or chapters. So this is not a pause of fear, this is a pause of integration. Here, Spirit invites you into a space of stillness where your nervous system can settle, your thoughts can quiet, and your emotions can stabilize, and your body can catch up with your growth. For you, Aquarius, this may feel unfamiliar. You may feel guilty for slowing down or restless without constant stimulation. But the Four of Swords here teaches you that rest is an active form of healing. There is also a message here of protection. This card often appears when Spirit is guarding you from any type of burnout, emotional overload, or repeating old cycles. By stepping back now, you prevent future breakdowns. Now, the imagery of this Four of Swords shows a figure at rest beneath stained glass, symbolizing faith, sanctuary, and safety, right? So for me, this suggests that you are being held during this pause, Aquarius. You don't need to stay alert, you don't need to prepare, you are allowed to let go. For some of you, Aquarius, this card asks you that what if you didn't have to think about the next step yet? Now, this rest creates space for your intuition to recalibrate, right? When you emerge from it, clarity will feel effortless, not forced. So rest is not retreat, Aquarius. It is preparation. And this card here is reminding you that healing happens in quiet moments, and that your next chapter will begin with a clearer mind and a steadier heart. Okay, right, let's move on to the last set of cards. Here you have prosperity, Aquarius. You have green garnet, prosperity. So I feel like this is sustainable abundance, your energetic renewal, and prosperity that grows with you. I feel like this prosperity card does not arrive with noise or spectacle. I feel like this arrives quietly, almost humbly, because the kind of prosperity coming in now is not meant to impress others. I feel like it is meant to stabilize you. Green garnet speaks of regrowth after depletion. So for me, this is prosperity that comes after loss, after exhaustion, emotional investment, or a long period where you gave more than you received. Now, for you, Aquarius, this card confirms that the phase of your energetic drain is ending, but abundance will return in a new form, shaped by your wisdom. This is not quick money energy, though. This is aligned prosperity. Now, what makes this card powerful is its timing. It appears after rest, surrender, in clarity, and grief. All right. And that tells me something important. I feel like your prosperity is no longer tied to struggle. Before, I feel like your abundance may have required you to overextend yourself, compromise your values, stay in draining dynamics, or even carry responsibility that wasn't yours. So, Green Garnet here says that cycle is done. Now, prosperity grows because your energy is no longer leaking. So, this card speaks to income that builds steadily, opportunities that match your capacity, and work that nourishes instead of depletes, and rewards that feel earned but not exhausting. For you, Aquarius, this is abundance that respects your nervous system. I'm telling you, there is also a strong message here about self-worth. Prosperity comes in now because you have unconsciously raised the standard of what you allow, and you are no longer chasing validation, approval, or external proof. And because of that, what comes to you is more solid, more reliable, and more aligned. Now, the green garnet here, Aquarius, is deeply connected to heart led growth. And this means that the prosperity ahead is not just financial, it's energetic. Like more stability in your daily life, better balance between effort and rest, or a sense of safety returning, and or confidence rebuilding quietly. And I feel like this card reassures you, yeah, that you don't need to rush. What's meant for you is already growing. Prosperity here is, for me, it's like organic. It grows because conditions are finally healthy, like fertile soil after a long winter. Your life is now ready to support growth without collapse. So, this is the kind of prosperity that lasts for your Aquarius because it grows at your pace. So, what's coming next may feel subtle at first, but over time, you will realize that you are no longer surviving, you are sustaining. Right now, let's move on to the your first tarot card here in the last set of cards. You have the Ace of Swords. For me, this is truth, mental clarity, and the power of a clean decision. Now, the Ace of Swords here arrives like a breath of cold, clear air after emotional fog, Aquarius. So for you, this card is not about conflict, it's about mental liberation. So this is the moment where your confusion ends. After everything you've processed, the impact, conflict, surrender, rest. The Ace of Swords here signals that your mind is finally sharp again. Not overthinking, not spiraling, just clear. You see the situation for exactly what it is without emotional distortion or wishful thinking. Right? So this card represents truth without apology. Now, for you, Aquarius, the Ace of Swords here often appears when you stop asking, what if, right? And start asking, this is what it is. So there is power here in that shift. So you are no longer negotiating with any uncertainty. You are naming your reality, and this clarity may come through a conversation that got straight to the point, or a realization you can't unsee, or a decision that suddenly feels obvious for you, or a boundary that no longer needs justification. And when it arrives, it brings relief for you, not fear. Now, the crown here above this sword reminds you, Aquarius, that truth is not cruel when it's clean. It does not need to wound, okay? It simply separates illusion from reality, and what falls away was never stable to begin with, right? So for you, Aquarius, I feel like this card also speaks to mental authority. That means here that you are reclaiming your right to trust your own reasoning again. Perhaps you doubted yourself for a while, allowed outside voices to cloud your judgment, or overanalyzed situations that required a simple answer. The Ace of Swords here, I feel like, restores your confidence in your own mind. So this is also the beginning of a new mental chapter, I feel like. And the Ace of here is not the end, it's the first clean cut that opens a new path for you. From here on, I feel like your decisions will become easier because they are grounded in truth rather than hope or fear. And the spirit message here is direct. Once you see clearly, you don't need to convince anyone else. So I feel like this card encourages honest communication, but also honors silence. So sometimes, clarity doesn't need explanation, it only needs action. So the message here for your Aquarius is that your truth is sharp, clean, and enough. Let it guide you moving forward. So with the Ace of Swords here, I feel like it means that here you step into a phase where your thoughts align with reality, and that alignment becomes your power. Right, let's move on to this Five of Cups. Now, yeah, Five of Cups. I feel like this Five of Cups, this is like you are grieving what didn't work in your life. I feel like this Five of Cups reveals what still lingers beneath the surface. There is grief here, Aquarius, but not the kind that traps you. I feel like this is an acknowledged grief, not suppressed grief. I feel like here you are finally allowing yourself to admit disappointment. Sorry for moving the card. Admit disappointment without turning it into self blame. So for me, I feel like this card is saying that yes, something didn't turn out the way you hoped. Yes, something was lost. Yes, you invested emotionally and it mattered. But notice something important. The figure here doesn't see the Two of Cups still standing. I feel like this tells me that Aquarius, you have been looking backward just long enough to feel the loss, but not long enough to stay there, right? There's the sadness. The sadness is real, but it is no longer defining your future. Yeah, so this grief is being integrated, not avoided. And for you, Aquarius, I feel like this card also speaks to disappointment that was minimized, loss that was perhaps rationalized, or feelings that were tucked away because it didn't make sense to dwell on them. You are a sign that knows how to move forward logically, but the Five of Cups here ask you to pause and feel what was left unresolved. So I feel like this card tells a story of something you truly hoped would work. Like there may have been an investment of time, energy, emotion, belief, or even money resources, right, that didn't return what you expected. And instead of collapsing, you adapted, you kept going, and you told yourself it was fine, but the grief is still lingered beneath the surface. For some of you, all right? And the Five Cups here is saying you don't need to pretend it didn't matter. I feel like this card honors your sadness without trapping you in it. It gives you permission to acknowledge regret, disappointment, or mourning without self blame. Now, what you lost mattered because you mattered in it, right? And at the same time, I feel like this card carries an important reminder that while your attention has been on what's spilled, not everything was lost. Two cups still stand beside you. Now, for you, Aquarius, I feel like this suggests that while one chapter ended painfully, for some of you, other opportunities, connections, or paths remained available, but could not fully reveal themselves until you turned around. Now, the grief had to be seen before hope could be accessed. So, this is not the energy of dwelling in the past, this is the energy of integrating it. Now, the Five of Cups here, I feel like this teaches you emotional maturity, the ability to grieve honestly without letting grief become your identity, right? So here I feel like you are learning how to carry loss with dignity, and that is what will free you, or what frees you, Aquarius. So I feel like the message here for Aquarius is that what you mourn does not define you. What remains will support you. Okay, so by honoring your disappointment, you release its hold, and when you do, your vision naturally lifts, revealing that life still has something left to offer you. All right. So now let's move on to the last but not the least tarot card you have here, the Knight of Pentacles. Now here, I feel like this Knight of Pentacles arrives as a grounding presence for you, Aquarius, after everything you've been through, right? Where earlier energy spoke of awakening, release, clarity, healing. I feel like this card answers with something simple but profound. Stay, build, and commit. Now, for you, Aquarius, this is a major energetic shift. You are often future oriented, you're visionary and mentally quick. The Nine of Pentacles here asks you to slow your stride, not because you're behind, but because what you're building now is meant to last. Now, this is not the energy of sudden leaps or dramatic changes. This is the energy of showing up every day, even when no one is watching, right? Progress here is measured not in excitement, but in real reliability. So I feel like this card speaks of choosing consistency over chaos, or stability over adrenaline, or discipline over distraction. For you, Aquarius, this often feels unfamiliar, but it is exactly what creates long-term success, right? So here, this Knight of Cups, I feel like this tells the story of someone who has learned from past disappointments. Here, you are no longer rushed into things fueled by hope alone. You move forward with intention, patience, and a clear understanding of your limits. There is a deep self-respect in this energy. Self-disrespect. Deep self-respect. And this knight does not chase quick rewards. He understands that real abundance compounds over time. So each small step matters. Each effort counts, and even when progress feels slow, it is unstoppable. Now, for you, Aquarius, this may show up as committing to a routine that supports your well being, building financial or career stability one step at a time, or staying focused on one path instead of scattering energy, and or choosing reliability in relationships, starting with yourself. The Knight of Pentacles here also represents trusting in the process. So I feel like here you are no longer measuring your worth by immediate results. Here you trust that what you invest in now will grow, even if the payoff isn't instant, right? So Spirit message here through this card is steady and reassuring that you don't need to rush. You are already on the right path. So slow progress is still progress, Aquarius, and this time it's permanent. With the Knight of Pentacles, I feel like here you are stepping into a phase of your life where consistency becomes your superpower and patience becomes your protection. So Aquarius, I feel like this story is about the maturity of your soul. Here, I feel like you are awakened, you disengaged, you surrendered, you rested, you healed, you gained clarity, you honored loss, and now you are building something real. You are no longer surviving cycles, you are constructing a future, slowly, intentionally, permanently. Now, this reading shows a powerful turning point for you, Aquarius, a moment of truth that awakens you and leading you to walk away from draining conflicts and old patterns. Now, through surrender and rest, you regain clarity, right? You heal emotional losses and realign with your inner truth, and what follows is not rushed change, but slow, steady progress towards your stability, prosperity, and peace. Here, you are no longer reacting to life, you are consciously building a future that lasts. Trust the pace you are moving at now, Aquarius. What's unfolding may feel quiet, but it is deeply intentional and protected. You are choosing alignment over struggle, clarity over confusion, and consistency over chaos, and that choice changes everything. Now, if this reading resonated with you, take what aligns and leave the rest. And if you're called to go deeper, details for a private person reading are in the description box below. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Aquarius. Until next time, stay grounded, stay true, and keep moving forward with trust, love, and light. Angel Sanghaya.